This part requires the following reagents: magnesium sulfate solution, zinc sulfate solution, ferrous sulfate solution, lead nitrate, copper sulfate, and sodium chloride solutions, and the following metals: zinc, copper, iron, aluminium, and lead. You will take 6 test tubes and you will half fill each test tube with each of the solutions. Now for in each of the 6 test tubes with a different solution, you will pour a metal. We will begin with lead into magnesium sulfate, into zinc sulfate, a few pieces of lead into the iron sulfate, a few pieces into the lead nitrate, into the copper sulfate, and then finally into the sodium chloride. Let's watch out for any reaction, any gas that is evolved, any color changes. Now, for the second part, the second metal we'll be using is aluminium. Again, half fill your test tubes with each of the metal solutions, and then we'll put the aluminium into magnesium sulfate, aluminium into the zinc sulfate, aluminium into the iron sulfate, aluminium into lead nitrate, aluminium into the copper sulfate, and then finally aluminium into the sodium chloride. Alright, the next metal we'll be using is iron into our different solutions. Iron into magnesium sulfate, iron into zinc sulfate, adding iron to iron sulfate, and now we're adding iron to the lead nitrate. Now we're adding the iron to the copper sulfate, and then finally we add the iron to the sodium chloride. Observe what happens and record your observations in the table provided. The next metal we'll be testing will be copper. So copper into magnesium sulfate, a little bit of copper into the zinc sulfate. Watch very closely to see what reactions happen. Now copper into iron sulfate. Now the copper into lead nitrate. The copper into copper sulfate. And finally, we put some copper into the sodium chloride. Let's observe. Anything that happens? All right. Now into fresh solutions. Again, our next metal will be zinc. Zinc into magnesium sulfate. Zinc into zinc sulfate. Zinc into iron sulfate. Zinc into lead nitrate. Zinc into copper sulfate. And then finally, we put some zinc into some sodium chloride. Right. Now the zinc solutions, we'll just put them aside for a while and we'll observe them after a bit. We'll take another 6 fresh solutions, and into these solutions we will add our final metal, which is magnesium. Please watch very closely to see what reactions take place and record your observations. So this is magnesium in magnesium sulfate. Next, we have magnesium in zinc sulfate. Next, we have magnesium, right? Do you see that? No. Right? There is effervescence if you look very closely. There's a gas that is being evolved. No, no hydrogen gas there. Not that we expect any hydrogen. Now into iron sulfate. Let's put some magnesium. Right? Maybe if we put white paper behind here, we should be able to see clearly, but you do see that there's a gas being evolved. If we put the magnesium into lead nitrate, and then magnesium into the copper sulfate. Right, so just put a little bit more. And then finally, if we put magnesium into the sodium chloride. So those are your 6 solutions with magnesium. Now earlier we had our solutions with zinc powder, and this is what they look like after that zinc has settled at the bottom. And that's the end of